Hello and welcome to the Roundtable podcast, where we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, innovation. I am Joel. Today we are joined by Steven V. McKinney. He's the founder and CEO of McKinney Consulting, Inc. He also has extensive background in mergers and acquisitions, dealing with energy transition deals, primarily in Asia. He is also an executive coach. Steven, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Nice to have me here today.
Great. So we're going to dive right in. I think where I want to start on the subject of an executive search firm.
Okay.
For those of us viewers listening who don't know what an executive search firm is, it's a company that specializes in placing highly qualified candidates in executive level positions across the public, private, and non-profit sectors. Could you share with us the story of how first McKinney Consulting came to be, and then what inspired you to start your own executive search firm, and then we can talk about how that has evolved over the last few years.
Okay. Yes. Prior to getting into the executive search field, I was in the athletic footwear industry. I had worked in various positions there for like 13 years. And then there came a time where I was working with a company that came back to Korea, started working with them, and globally they had financial problems. And they actually went bankrupt. So I had a decision to make. Then, okay, what am I going to do? So my wife is Korean American, and we had a desire to stay in Korea. So I thought, well, maybe now's the time to switch. So actually what I did something that I don't advise people to do, but I did it, was I decided to contact some search firms, and I went to actually and met them in their offices and talked to them and said, hey, I need to make a career choice. I don't know what I'm wanting to do. I just have some ideas or thoughts or like to talk to you. And through those meetings, one of the companies said, hey, you'd be awesome at this, with your manufacturing background experience at a global level, your global experience in R&D for Adidas, you'd be awesome for this, and you love people. And I said, yeah, sure. And so they talked me into joining them. All right. And it was a Korean-based firm. So I joined this search firm and began to work in there and got some experience over a couple of years. But in the process, I began to realize that they were really Korean, and me being a foreigner, a non-Korean, and working and having a lot of experience in multinational companies, I saw an opportunity. I thought there's a way to reach out to these multinational companies and a way to communicate and provide services for them. I think that's different than what that particular company was doing, and to get them to change their ways would not happen, which is okay because everyone has their style, their processes, and the way they want to do things, and that's awesome. But I decided then, with some encouragement from other leaders, saying, "Why don't you start your own search firm?" So that was a leap of faith. It was scary, but I decided to dive into the pool and create my own executive search firm, and that was in 2001.
So you started off as an executive search firm, and I know you have, really expanded your services over the last several years, many years.
Yes.
Could you tell us specifically sort of the list of services you provided, and more importantly, what led you to sort of develop and evolve as you did?
Yes, that's a good question. I would like to say it was all strategy. It was all the brainchild of mine, and it was awesome. But reality, that's not really what happened. What happens, we began executive search in 2001. And being a foreigner in Korea with an executive search firm, building relationships, I became active in the American Chamber of Commerce. I became a co-chairman of the committee. Later, elected to serve on the board, which I served for 13 years. I began to grow my contacts and basis. And what began to happen is that all of a sudden I was beginning to get like consulting projects. This was one of the first things that happened pretty soon in the process, maybe a year or two later. And so case by case, if it was a project that I felt comfortable with, I would do it. For example, let's say you have a foreign leader come over here to Korea, and they have some businesses, and maybe they had no experience in manufacturing in Korea or global R&D, some of the experiences I've had. And so by me winning their trust, they begin to say, well, could you help me on this type of project? And so it just kind of evolved. The consulting says, well, okay, yes, I could help you with that. I can provide you a value and a service, and that started to grow. And then the coaching came in shortly thereafter, about like maybe 2003, because all of a sudden, what I was noticing in many candidates, and I think this is still true today, most candidates, that's people that, we call them candidates, people that we're looking to find, identify, and to, give them to the clients for consideration. I should maybe clarify that. That's what we call them. Clients are the hiring ones, the companies that say, I want to hire someone. And then the candidates are the people that we present forward for the clients to consider hiring. Okay. So these candidates, oftentimes then and still now, are usually not prepared. They're not prepared for the interviews. They're not prepared to have the conversations about themselves, because most people are humble and they feel uncomfortable talking about themselves. And this is normal. This is normal. But if there's ever a time where you need to express what you know, what you can do, achievements you've had, this is the time to do it. When you're having the opportunity to interview with somebody, the interview process is not a perfect situation, but you have a short amount of time, a few minutes or an hour, maybe at the most, to get someone over to sell someone on your value and the value proposition you can bring to that company. So I began to notice that and wind up coaching more and more of my individual candidates on how to speak, how to answer the questions, and how to present themselves. I'm not saying play games. I'm not saying trick. I'm saying being honest and be very truthful, but also learn to express that very effectively. So this evolved. And then this grew on to where I just felt that I needed more education. So as you know from my bio, I have about four different coaching credentials now. Okay, from behavioral coaching to coaching with Covey 7 Habits to working through leadership coaching strategies for Harvard University. That's that program. So I kept and have continued to grow, get more certificates or licenses or what have you, and knowledge in this area, because it began to grow then to individuals outside of just searching ambassadors. I've coached ambassadors from countries I shouldn't mention, but confidentiality, government officials, very senior level, on different things from performance to actually communicating well with foreign companies and organizations, to where maybe, because I understand the Korean culture pretty well and how to do business here, for them to understand why the foreigners would think and act differently. So that evolved. And then it evolved later into what you and I were talking about earlier before we started, about startup companies.
Okay.
Later that evolved into that, to where we were also requested to be the head of the Seoul Global Center for the Seoul Metropolitan Government. That organization is the largest of its type in the world, actually, because it's all encompassing. 7 village centers, 7 migrant workers, 4 business centers. And I got into that program, and I started realizing they only had positions for 9 startup companies in their incubation program. And I was blessed with a great team of people, and helped to grow that to about 54 companies within 3 years. So I became a judge, deciding, to help being a part of the decision making of who gets into the program, who does not. This led to me participating the past few years in the K Startup Grand Challenge, which is the South Korean national government's largest program for startups. It usually starts out with around 3,000 companies globally, gets down to about 60 or 65. And then myself and some other people are invited in to help judge and evaluate these 60-some companies to pick the top 30. So that's been awesome as well. And I participate and continue. That's just kind of grown and evolved. And last night I did again for the Seoul Global Business Center. I'll lecture there quarterly and coach them a little bit. So hundreds of people I've coached on the startup company. So that's evolved. All right. So as you said, the evolving of the services from the consulting, from the coaching, to the payroll services, bookkeeping, that's evolved from clients needing people on their employment records here legally, but yet not setting up a full company. And we provided and grew our business license to be able to provide and help them. So I guess that was a long answer, but to describe it, it's all been a process of client needs, expectations, our abilities to deliver that. And it all has one big quote or one single thing that ties it all together, and that's people. It's about human resources. It's about helping leaders, helping performance organizations. And then our niche has also been, in all of these cases, multinational companies, all right, mostly seeking bilingual Koreans for their positions, or in the startup companies, or in those types of folks. A lot of those are foreigners, actually, looking to grow their business or build a business here in Korea. So it's kind of evolved, I guess, over clients' needs. And also my desire, I should say, to have a portfolio of services. Because as you know, some businesses go up and down because of many, many reasons why. And so to have a portfolio of service offerings and product services, that can help these up and downs to level those mountains to hopefully be a little bit more consistent. That's one of the reasons too. Yeah.
I think you made a few interesting points. In my case, in my consulting company, it started because I was working with one company over here, and then by word of mouth, another company asked me to do some similar services for them, whether it was marketing or in their international relations department. And at one time, I signed, 3 or 4 different contracts with multiple companies, and I was going to this office this day and then another office on this day. And then I was sort of inspired to sort of combine everything and put it under one company and start my own consulting company. So on the idea of expanding services, I started off doing very basic media and social media management and things like that. And then, a client or someone would come to me and say, "Hey, Joel, could you do this for me?" And if I thought that I could do it, I would do that. And if I was successful, then I realized, hey, I have a new service that I can offer to my other clients. And it slowly started growing that way. An interesting thing about McKinney Consulting is that you are now ventured into your M&A advisory work. I'm curious what prompted that expansion, and then what sort of value do you bring to that space? I know that there's going to be different, confidentiality things you might not be able to provide examples, but I'm curious, how did you start in that?
Well, good question. And yeah, it's nice to hear your background. It's very similar in many ways. The old idea that necessity is the mother of all inventions, right? The necessity of these needs and then people trusting you to come to you and use you is very similar to my background. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. And so on the M&A front, I have been approached for many years by various individuals to get involved in this area. And to be honest with you, I've always felt that in the M&A strategy world, that you always had to have this strong financial acumen or this strong banking or accounting or lawyers expertise and things. And I've been more of an operational guy, from the consumer goods side and from manufacturing, R&D, obviously, and business services. So I've always felt like, I'm not sure if that's for me. But finally, someone contacted me that I had trust in, who's also been recognized as an honorary citizen of Seoul, which I humbly say that I am, and that I felt that has a reputation that I could trust, and with specific need. And what started off was a specific need from a contact of mine that this organization had. They wanted to do business with. So we tried it, began to work with them and have some meetings and discuss with it. It didn't work out, that initial one, because of actually it was a French company, which was the product or the business that was one of the investment. They decided to back out, not on this side. So that happens. But anyway, so that kind of got us started in this idea. And so I realized that there is a role that I could play in that, because I have developed over the years many, many contacts. As you know, and I didn't mention, I guess, but I'm also a member of Kestria, which is the largest partnership in executive search worldwide. So I do have global contacts. I have global partners, and we know each other well on a first name basis. We just had our global meetings last week, actually, in Tokyo. Last year, it was in Barcelona, Spain. All right. The year before was in Lima, Peru. So it is global, and we do know each other. So I do have global contacts and have built these relationships over many years. So to be able to do this matchmaking and to identify business opportunities, business that need investors that need some business, it's not too much a stretch in some of the processes as what I'm used to in executive search and in consulting. And I don't pretend to be a financial expert or a banker, but we have those people. We have those experts on the team. And so that's given me the confidence to move forward. And so I began to grow my network even more globally now through other organizations and stuff, to be able to perhaps provide, expertise in this area and knowing people, knowing how to work with people. Obviously, I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm very comfortable talking with senior leaders, because that's who I'm used to working with. And also, I guess, I think another thing that gives me confidence in this role is having been doing executive search now for about 23 years. I'm not sure if people understand this, though, but oftentimes we will work within industries with particular candidates and particular clients that know more about what we're talking about than we do. Now, let me explain that. Think about this. If I'm looking for a high-level engineer or a CFO for a certain company, there's no way I would have the knowledge of the depth that this person would have unless I had that CFO experience. But I have to know a little bit enough about it, be able to have the conversation, be able to separate, well, this CFO candidate A and this difference of this CFO candidate B, what their difference is, what's their strength, weakness. I have to know certain things, or even the client company, right? But I have to have confidence to be able to talk with them, understand very quickly, understand their business model, understand what it takes to be successful in there, and then add value. So that I think that's not for everyone. That takes, sometimes I tell people, I feel we're sometimes part missionary, we're part TV, radio broadcasters, it's reporting on a story that we just learned something about. So I think it does take a multi-talented, I don't know how you describe us, diverse type of person to be able to do that. And I see those same skill sets being required in the M&A world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick before we continue on the M&A work, with the executive search, usually what's that time frame look like if a client comes to you and they're looking for some candidates? What's that time frame from that initial meeting or starting working with that client, and then you're starting the interview process? Are you interviewing each client before you before you send them to the client? How does that work?
Good question. The timetables around the world can differ based on different markets. Okay. In South Korea, we seem to be a little faster than some other markets. Okay. So the general calculations or timetables that we would discuss with our clients to expect or forecast, right, is about 1 month for the search process. Then there's usually anywhere from a week to 4 weeks of client interviews, getting on their schedules. And then in Korea, by law, you're supposed to turn in a 30-day notice before you begin to work. So realistically, we budget out and plan forecast about a 90-day cycle from when we begin to when the person actually starts work. And obviously, there's exceptions to all of this. Things can happen faster and quicker and easier. And then to answer your question on the interviews, yes, there's what we call the long list process, where on average we may have anywhere from 45 to 80 some long listed candidates, and sometimes even more, that we start to filter through and really start getting serious about. Then that gets nailed down and gets shorter and shorter to where there's email communications, chatting, and then interviewing process internally within our organization before they're ever introduced to the client for a short list, which is usually 3 to 5 candidates. All right. So it's a lot of work, a lot of process. And one reason, and when you understand that, you can understand why oftentimes when people approach us or try to get us to give them our time or to interview them and stuff, it's just not feasibly possible to do that with everyone that wants it. Although they may be a great person, great talented, but when you have a targeted approach where you say, I'm under contract with this client to fill this role, right? And then I have to use my people, their time, their resources to search and interview and contact all these people for that focused search assignment. That's where they have to spend their time because that's how we survive, right? That's what we're being paid to do. So please, I would just say to your audience, please understand that about executive search professionals. They don't mean to be disrespectful or not totally ignore you if they just don't give you their time. It's just that time is so valuable and difficult to manage.
And you really are looking for the best of the best for that client.
Yeah. Yes, because we put guarantees. So we put guarantees in our contracts. Now think about that. How can I guarantee if I search for you and I find you and I'm going to introduce you that you're going to stay? I'm putting money on the line, the table. I'm saying in my best professional expertise that you're the right man for the job and that I think you'll go there, you will be successful, and that you will stay. Right?
How do you ensure that?
Well, that's a good question. And the only way you can ensure it is that be very good in your processes, have experience doing this, have great experience reading people, getting good reference checks on them, right? And expertise and experience is the biggest thing because, for example, we're judging people all the time, whether they realize it or not. How quickly do they respond to us? What's their attitude? How flexible are they? Do they seem to have the right mindset? And do they look like they will fit in that culture? And I'll give you a quick example, an easy example. When I was the head of Adidas globally, I was hiring internally, globally also for our different positions. And you could take a competitor, let's say like a Reebok or a Nike or a Puma or whatever, and you would think, okay, the processes are the same. The type of clients are the same. The production facilities, everything's pretty much the same. So looks like one person that could work in this company could work in the other company as well. Well, that's wrong because the corporate culture and what it takes to be successful in one of those organizations, and I know specifically about those organizations, ironically, you could be a superstar in one of those and be a super failure in the other, but you've not changed. You see? So knowing the corporate culture, knowing what it takes to succeed in an organization is also super important. So all these expertise things you develop over time, and there are a variety of ways we develop these skills and these abilities, right? But that's how we can then go with confidence and place the candidates, right? And give guarantees. And we have to be very good at it. And very rarely do we have to enforce our guarantee. All right, or we couldn't do it because you couldn't make a living. That didn't work. Yeah, so expertise, I think, is the short answer. And
are there any situations with clients where you have sort of long-term contracts, and are there any situations where you hire them sort of candidates that are not on the executive level? Let's say they want a little bit lower management or a long-term contract where they come to you anytime they need a new employee on any level. They come to you. Is that any situations like that?
Yes, we like clients like that, and we have them from time to time over years. I just finished one actually we've had for like 3 years that started from scratch. They had no one on the ground. Well, it started one person from the United States, and they've grown to around 45 people. And yes, that happens. And those are really good programs for us, the service provider, and for that client, because we become very intimately involved in their business. We really understand who they are, what they do, how they do what they do, the types of people they really want to build their corporate culture around. And I think they get the best out of us when clients use us that way. Definitely when they use multiple, even just beyond one search, just having multiple search with the same service provider is valuable to the client. And I would encourage users of professional services, learn how to best use the professional services, right? Think about this. If you have a lawyer that you're using a lot for whatever purpose, why would you be switching around? Do you know what I mean? Unless their expertise is that you need. I mean, you probably, and just like accounting and bookkeeping and stuff, you don't want to be switching those too often. So why not do the same thing with your consultants, your coaches, your executive search professionals? Let them get to know you. You know them. They know you. You build a trust. And also there's another hidden value that a lot of people don't understand is if I'm doing business with you, and let's say, and I'm going to have multiple projects with you, just let's suppose that you even reveal to me confidentially, and everything we do is confidential or we'd be out of business. So you don't have to worry about that, right? But you tell me, listen, I don't have this search project now, but I'm anticipating in my plans, I'm going to need to hire someone like this or like that 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, whatever. If I know something's coming, we can do what's called a loose search or a casual search, or be on the lookout, knowing that they don't want to hire them now, but I know they're going to be needing this type of person, because timing is everything. Because you have to realize, just because the client wants you, they want to hire right now, maybe that right person you need is not available right now. Maybe they're available a month earlier because we found them, or maybe they're available 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 months later, right? So the timing doesn't always match up perfectly. However, you can minimize that dilemma by sharing with your search professionals, hey, these are the kinds of people I'm looking for. Maybe they don't go under contract right now, but I'm going to reveal that to you, that I will be looking for this. So you can kind of keep it on your radar. That's helpful. I think it's helpful for the search professional. It's helpful for the client to give them a better service. And it's something very easy to do, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I go to I want to take one step back and talk about M&A really quick before we move on.
Okay.
And this is sort of a personal question. Since this year, and I never really considered it until a few moments ago, until you mentioned it. I've never considered myself in the M&A area whatsoever, but I've had different VCs reach out to me looking for some matchmaking, looking for startups. So over the last few months, I've been taking meetings and meetings and meetings for these VC that I'm working with, and connecting them with some Korean startups and Korean companies. So I was wondering, how are you getting, different VCs or different companies who are looking to acquire other companies here in Korea? How are they reaching out to you, contacting you, and just sort of the current market situation? What are some of the things that you see those VCs that are looking for? In my case, I sit in on every interview with any company that I do any matchmaking for. And I was wondering if you have a similar process for those sort of deals.
Yes, and it's not for the faint at heart, because as you were taught, and I'm sure this is what you're alluding to too, is it's not like a search assignment or consulting assignment where the roles, responsibilities, what's expected, and the timing is pretty routine or pretty fairly consistent. In this M&A world, it's not like that. There's a lot of almost, I guess I could say that, I think, wasted time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And it's a much longer process. It's still relationship driven, but it's also, timing is even more important than ever. And I think that And I think that still takes some timing to figure that out. Like, where is the money coming from? Where do they want to invest it? And then where's the right target? And just like in search, the organizations that want money are kind of like the candidates that want the job. There's usually more of those than there are the folks there with the pocketbooks with the money, right? So it's a tough area. I think that it's a very tough area to get into. And one of the challenges is a lot of people that are in it they do multiple things. You know what I mean? Or have a variety of services or things to offer because of the long process and because of the difficulties of it. It's not easy. If I make it sound easy, don't take that away. It is not easy.
Mm-hmm. A lot of meetings, and I guess you could say wasted time, because I have so many different startups and companies contacting me now, but I have a limited number of VCs that I'm working with, and they all have their different target markets and areas and the type of companies that they're willing to invest in. So I feel like I've been focused on creating a system to sort of keep the meetings going and also keep the fresh companies coming in, as well as actual VCs with actual money and people who aren't just sort of checking out the market, people who are actually looking to and ready to invest or acquire a company.
Yes, and I think also one of the challenges is if you start going down a path and you start doing something, and I'll give one example without revealing too much. There was something I've been working on, and it's data centers. The huge data centers, because of computing these days, are growing all over the place. And we identified a source that we're building that wanted funds, and we have some organizations that have the funds, and it's a seriously big deal, actually, a pretty big deal. I mean, they call it medium market. It's like $100 million deal. All right, but getting into the deal, as you started getting into it, one of the things I realized they didn't have is they were not using renewable energy sources. And in the data centers, they have to have an energy source and then a couple of backups, right? And this organization was only using the grid and what was available right now and things. So that made it less attractive to the investor. But everything else, the location, the investment, the potential customers they had already under LOIs, and all of this is all lined up. But then again, that one key point is enough to make the investors walk.
Okay.
So sometimes you get so even far down that rabbit hole, then all of a sudden something you find out, or all of a sudden one of the most common things is the size of the deal. Oftentimes, some deals they say it was too small or it's too big. So it's like buying putting on some clothing or shoes. It's the same concept. It has to fit their need. And whatever their strategy are. So yeah, it's complicated. It's not simple.
Right. I have a real estate background, so I can understand that during the due diligence process, there's so many different factors that buyer is gonna, so many reasons why they might back out of the deal, even if it's last minute. If they find out something about, the company as well, whether, whatever the issues might be with the finances.
Wow.
Yeah. So difficult area, takes a lot of work. Like you said, not for the faint-hearted. You have to really you have to have the energy, I feel like, to deal in that area. Moving on to your leadership and sort of management consulting. You mentioned Adidas earlier. You've also worked with Converse and a couple other big sort of brand names. How was your experience working with some of those companies? Helped you when it comes to leadership and your consulting, when it comes to management?
Good question. I can think of several things, but let me just mention one or two. I believe one of the things from beginning in Reebok, after I was doing production management, and then I got into R&D area, we were doing the advanced concepts work here in Busan. Okay. That was for globally. All right. And Korea used to be the athletic footwear capital of the world. But as that business has moved on, many of the Korean companies have moved with the industry and gone to the other Asian countries. So as I got into that, and then I became and was recruited to go to Adidas and be the head of all of that, the worldwide. I think one of the things, important thing that I think that I learned in that role, or I developed, was the competitive nature of my role. The idea that I was working with companies like Goodyear on rubber products, DuPont on polymers, another smaller company on a bonded nylon thread, a variety of different interests and different components that people wouldn't realize and think about that industry. They may think it's only one or two items, but it's not. Inside even one product, there's lots of different suppliers involved and products and processes. Excuse me. But in doing that and being a global competitor, I think I developed this sense of continually searching deep inside about what was the next thing we wanted to develop. What was the thing we wanted to do? I had color specialists with me from New York that was on my team. I learned the importance of color, okay, and the decision that makes. Color decisions are $1 million decisions. A lot of people don't realize that. So finding
Can you go into that a little bit?
Sure. Whenever we make up a product line, you have to, first of all, you have to think about the product cycle. You have product that's on the customer's feet right now. People have already bought. You have products that's sitting in the store waiting to be purchased. There's another season of product. They're what we call it's on the water. It's the season before that, and it's in container loads being shipped from Asia in most places to America, to Europe, and to other places around the world. All right. And then there's the product that are one step before that, or back, they're in production right now. All right. Then before that, there's the development and the commercialization, the development of the project. So a couple seasons back in the process, right, that's being worked on. So like right now, when we're starting products, we're actually 2 or 3 seasons before, at least before it actually hits the consumer's feet. So we're anticipating that the products that are out there now are selling and they're doing well, and that the next product that's going to be coming soon will do as well or better, and then the ones after that. And so we're having to anticipate and forecast. And how do you forecast fashion and trends? Extremely difficult. Who knows? So what we do in that world, we do, and I'm sure other industries do this, is that we look at other industries. We look at the automotive industries. We look at fashion apparel industries. We look at other key markets like Paris, Seoul, Hong Kong, London, you name it, all over the world, and looking at ideas and fashions and trends and at spotting, identifying, trying to figure out what we think would be the next products that we should build. All right. And then what you have is you have what's called evolutionary products and revolutionary products. Okay. Most products are evolutionary. They're adjustments or tweaks on existing things. Most athletic shoes, you'll have a black version and a white version because they're usually the best sellers. But then you'll have your hero colors of maybe blue or red or some kind of magenta or yellow or something, right? So there's a whole process of this where you're always looking and figuring out, trying to make a decision and making it. So that's why color choices, we would have what's called color palettes for each season, okay? And then we go and we work on those. So there's a lot of work and a lot of research and things in decision-making, deciding those color palettes to be consistent, right? And then, so even that process is very in-depth. I mean, even now, my wife's funny. She always has my opinion on choices of things that she buys and things because she knows I've been trained in this, and I still have an eye for this and feel, and I can see something and I can say that would sell in Japan or that would sell in Hong Kong, but it wouldn't sell in Korea. And it's a long story of how I can do that. But you develop that sense and that abilities, I think, to work on that. So I believe that sense of trying to be tuned to what's going on now, what's going on in the future, and also trying to beat myself, being more concerned about my own performance in my organization, our product service, more than the competitors. Yes, I kind of need to know what the competitors are doing, but we don't want to know too much because you don't want to accidentally copy. All
Yeah.
right. Or you definitely don't want to do that. So you have to be very, very careful. All right. So, and they're very sensitive about these things. Like, for example, when I left Reebok, I guess I can say this, it's been long enough. There was some heavy discussions because I was in advanced concepts before. So there was a lot of sensitivities about me leaving Reebok to Adidas. But if you know me and my character, I would be more nervous about sharing knowledge or know-how or something than anyone else because of my personality, my character. I'm more nervous about it accidentally, doing something that the other company was doing because I definitely want to stay away from that. So I think that whole idea of creativity, creating, building, and I think that comes into why an earlier question you asked me about why did I develop new products and services on my journey over these past 20 plus years. Part of that is trying to stay relevant, trying to stay important, trying to be sensitive to the needs. I'm more worried about not changing than changing. A lot of people don't want to change, even a lot of young people. And I say, you act like an old person. There are lots of young people there. They get very quickly, they get something that works and they're afraid to change or move beyond it. I'm not that way. As I work with my oldest son, who will be taking over my company eventually, I'm more concerned about his vision, where he thinks we should go, what we should be doing, because I know I don't have a monopoly on all the ideas. And great ideas come from everywhere. And I think to be successful, we need to constantly be reinventing ourselves, looking at things, questioning, and getting better. If we don't, I think that's very risky. I think that's very risky if you don't do that. Yeah. I guess I answered your question. So a lot of things I
Yes, you
learned.
did.
I think I evolved in that. I think that's helped me a lot, actually, in my way of thinking. Yes.
Do you think that by running your own firm, you learned more in terms of leadership than working at some of those other larger sort of brand names?
I'm going to think about that.
Well, the reason for the question is, maybe they're at this point because you're also hiring for other clients, but at the same time, you have your own team. So
Yes.
what would be a few factors that you really look, at a person to really know that this person is in it for the long haul? Nobody has the same vision or the same drive, or they're not up all night like the CEO might be, stressing and focusing and thinking about their company. And when you find somebody like that, that's the closest thing to, the best thing you can get. But what are some of the ways to get somebody like that on your team as you build your own company?
Well, it's very difficult, obviously, because having the owner mindset, right, and the mentality, you kind of have to be the owner, right? And one of the things that's a challenge, and or it's a pain, or I guess frustrating a little bit, is like develop a team like this, and then you actually develop people that go out and then do it on their own. Although I did it. And so I've had spinoffs from my own company, which was disappointing in some ways because I felt that we could still do what they wanted to do inside. I'm flexible to make it, but yet they wanted to do that. And then some of them said, well, yeah, but I need to go and experience it for myself. And so I understand that. So I think it's extremely difficult to do what you're saying. But I do think, yes, perhaps I probably have learned more in this case because the way I've grown the business, my involvement in external organizations as the chambers of commerce, serving on the different boards, overseeing that organization for the Seoul Metropolitan Government. Those opportunities I could not have had if I was a hired gun inside one of those larger companies. I'd been limited on what I could do. I'd been limited to just their objectives and their needs, and even serving anywhere externally of the company, most cases are not possible. Or even like I write blogs and articles. I do a variety of speaking engagements on TV and on radio and other things. All right. And I can say pretty much what I want to say because it's my company. And if I believe it, I can say it. So I don't have the limitations. But sometimes I have limitations because the boards that I'm on certain topics and certain things, I do have limitations, or I should be very careful, which I am. But I have probably less limitations than if I was a hired gun inside one of these companies. So yes, in that way. And then I think because of my continual education of myself, and it's a daily thing, actually. I have a process where I'm constantly gaining knowledge. It's never ending. Had I had any idea that I would study and do as much as I do now, when I was in high school or university, I would say, what? No, not me. But it's what I have to do, you know? Yeah. So no, I guess the answer is yes. I guess I probably gain more. And I think what you alluded to too, by working with these large multinational companies, these Fortune 100 companies, and also other great companies that most people never heard of, but they're great in their industries. Learning them. I'll just tell you one easy example. I remember years ago we worked with a print cartridge company, right?
Print cartridge company.
Yes, they make printers and they make the cartridges for their printers, right? And unless you know the industry, you would think, well, the printers is where they make the money because it's the highest dollar value. I mean, it's the most money spent in the cartridge, it's a small piece, but that's not true. They make their money on the refilled cartridges. That's really where they make the money. So they make the printer pricing so competitive because once they get you in, they know you have to buy their printing cartridges. So I didn't know that until I got into that world. Or another lesson learned, like in insurance industry, when I began to work in that industry years ago, I learned, guess who's the biggest purchasers of insurance? Insurance companies.
Largest. All other insurance companies.
Insurance companies. And there are reinsurance companies that reinsure. The insurance companies buy insurance and reinsure themselves, protecting their risk and things. And so insurance companies are the biggest purchasers of insurance. So, so I think you find out things like this in different industries and different technologies and things that is, I think, quite interesting. It gives you a broader perspective of, I guess, just the world and how things operate. And also, I mentioned earlier about the cultures. It's kind of interesting that I've seen crossovers, like things that I learned about different companies when I was in production, that different countries like France, Japan, Korea, and America would have different quality control expectations. And I won't get into details because I want to give secrets away. But there's different details and secrets or things that these countries have and demand of the customer, of the producer, the manufacturer. And what's interesting is I saw a correlation in the other industries, in different products and different services with some of these very same countries, some cultural nuances, some attitudes, some things that cross over to different products and services. And that's kind of interesting. You think, wow, these people from this part of the world are kind of like this. And you see this not only from a cross-culture perspective, which I will coach on, but you see it in their product decisions, the choices they make, and then their expectations of quality and what they say quality is and what others predict. So it's different. So to see that crossover into different, for example, I'll give you a quick example. We've always said the Koreans are very ambidextrous, very good with their hands. So that's why they're very good in athletic footwear making. They're very good with apparel making. But did you know that the Koreans are also very good with surgery on humans? They said they're very good. Yes, so they're very, very good with their skills. So you think, well, they can make a shoe, they can sew your heart. or they can fix your heart. Yes, they can. I've known a couple of foreigners who have had brain surgeries at a major hospital here, and a lot of things. And so I think that's kind of interesting to see some trends and things that you wouldn't necessarily associate with that culture and those groups of people that crosses over different industries and products and services. And that's kind of fascinating. That could be a book in itself, actually. Right? Give me an idea.
Sort of a generic question, but I want to talk about sort of challenges that you might have faced and experienced when it comes to growing your business. In your case, over 20 years, there's obviously something that you're doing right, and sort of something you figured out. A lot of businesses fail rather quickly. What has been some of the challenges, and do you have any rules when issues sort of arise in your company of how to deal with unforeseeable events and things like that?
Well, I think probably the biggest challenge in a small business or having your own business, stuff like this, is definitely cash flow and cash flow management. Particularly as you probably experienced too in a consulting or services business, it's the revenue is not guaranteed for most things, right? For most services, so that makes it very difficult to forecast. Okay, what you might do and how it can go. You could have one client that really makes your year, or you can lose one client that really kills your whole year, right? And so I think managing the cash flow is extremely difficult. For me personally, honestly, I think my faith, my Christian faith, is probably I won't say that. It is the thing that drives me. It is the thing that has helped me to deal and to survive and to thrive at times and survive at other times. Because of my faith, I think has helped me to focus on what's important and to do my best. And I know where my blessings come from. I don't take credit for anything that I've been able to do, and I know where they come from. So to recognize that and to put God first in my life, and then pray, work like everything. There's an old saying, like work like everything depends on me, and pray like everything depends on God. And somewhere in between, we survive and thrive sometimes and survive in other times. So I think it's not a secret, but I think that's is something that I really believe in, and that I think helps me tremendously.
Work like everything's on me and pray like everything's on God. Is that right?
Yes.
Quick question. You mentioned your son a few moments ago. A lot of children want to be like their parents, and then in some cases, the parents are pushing the kids to, in different fields. What was the situation? How did your son want to work with you? Was that always his interest? And more specifically, how did he? I don't know. What's the background? What's the story behind that? Him working with you, and I've seen lots of situations where the children go in a completely different area, different way than their father or their parents.
Yeah, good question. He first worked with me here for a few years. Then he went off and he helped a startup company, not a startup company, but as a Korean company, expand into America. He went and helped this Korean company expand and open up their operations in the United States and gained valuable experience doing that. He also worked for a few years in Japan. So he's a native English speaker, and he's fluent in Korean, Japanese, and he understands Kanji, which Japanese, Chinese language. So he's multiple talented. He has creative talents in design and other things. So he and I share some common ideas and things on creativity and everything that we do. And then he came back about 7 years ago. I needed him. I asked him to come back, so the timing was right. His passions and interests are not exactly like mine, but they're enough aligned and enough to where we can adjust the business to where he can explore and expand. And that's what we're doing now. We're trying to explore and expand in some ways that makes him happy, that he would likes to go in too. All right. So I don't want to tell all of our secrets, but that's so, yeah. So it hasn't just been a simple, easy thing. It was, he tried it for a while. He didn't want to do it. He took other opportunities, and I needed him. He came back. And so now he's developing his own niche within this, his own personality. And now we're adjusting that and developing on some stuff for the future that more the direction that he wants to go in a little bit, right? And my role will probably be changing. For example, in his coaching, he's become a coach too, but he has some other niches and some other areas that he wants to focus on. And then it's a little different than mine, which is fine. His expertise and his interests, that's cool. So he will go that way. I may, and then we have some other folks that work some other pieces of our businesses that maybe he would prefer to not be as hands-on, but oversee that, but have some other people do that while he does some other things. So I think we're evolving and developing that. It's evolving. It's a process, actually. I wish it was as simple as just say, okay, here's the business. This is what I do. This is how I do it. Here, you just take over and do it. It's not that simple because for the very reason that you said, he's not me. He's his own man. He has his own ideas, but he has his own strengths and his personalities. And I think he's a handsome guy. And when we do our global, they use him a lot as a model, it seems like, in the images. And and that's why I say our company will continue to evolve because of we're evolving. Yeah, but I love it.
Great.
I really enjoy spending time with him. I think he enjoys spending time with me too. We can have great conversations. He's also good to bounce ideas off of. Relook at my articles, say his perspective, say, well, the younger generation may think this, or have you considered that? And I can take his criticism very easily because we've developed that rapport. That's one thing that we do in McKinney is that I insist that we be very honest with each other. If we make a mistake, just admit it. And let's just work together to fix it, because I said there's probably no mistake that you can make that I've not already made myself. So I'm not going to kill you over anything. So let's just work together to the solution. And I think this is good for us as individuals, and it's good for our clients because we give our clients the best, right? Because we work as a team on every project pretty much, so there's, you get the high quality results from us no matter what you use from us. It's not just, well, we got this person there, so that's the level of service we got, or we got this person. No, we work to where the quality is consistent in what we give. So,
very interesting. Yes, I think there's some good tips in there for, we've talked about managing, relationships, but, managing a relationship with your own son as well. I can imagine that's not the easiest thing, but I think that I don't have any children, but I imagine that's a proud sort of a father to have your son sort of walking in your footsteps.
And I think one more thing I would say on that is I think that the other value to me is that I really am highly motivated to coach him and to help him in all of his development. As much as help he'll take from me, I'm willing to give it because, he's my son, right? And so I want him to do his best. I want to pull the best out of him that I can. So I know when he went back and worked for that Korean company for a while, they were surprised based on his age at that time, his maturity level, and his ability to work with senior executives and stuff, because he'd been working with it a lot. He'd been coached a lot, and he didn't even really completely realize it. Do you know what I mean? Because when you're in that atmosphere and your father is the president and founder, and you get that constant coaching, whether you realize it or not, it rubs off. And so they were shocked that he would have the maturity level and the confidence and ability to approach different issues and to do some of the things he did. So I think that also gave him great confidence when he came back. Because sometimes people say, oh, I worked in the family business. Oh, maybe I don't learn as much. Not necessarily true. Because in an organization like this, they will get more opportunities than they would in some places. where they're stuck to just a cubicle, just a little piece of the business. But for them to understand the total business and every aspect of it, to understand every part of it is very, very helpful, I think.
Fantastic. Can we touch a little bit on Kestra? You are the managing partner of Kestra.
Yes.
Specifically, what is your role there, and some, sort of how that the significance of that company is. It's apparently the world's largest alliance of boutique retained executive search firms.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. What happens is when we accepted the request to join this organization, which was back in 2017, it was named IRC at that time globally. It's been around about over 30 years, because we celebrated 30 years. So 30 years, actually. What it allows us to do is to grow and expand globally, all right, without the high investment. And what it allows us to do is that because of the way the process works, where we are on practice groups together, we'll have regional meetings, we have global meetings, we're interacting constantly. And then when we work on projects, we share the revenue from the projects. So that makes it financially doable, okay, and beneficial for all parties involved. So by working with them, we can then give our clients this local expertise of our market and a global expertise. Let's take, for example, my partner for Singapore and China. She's been in business. She had a background previously, the main partner, like myself, in other industries before ever getting into this business, and then about the same years of experience. She's the owner. She has a mentality like me. And people that are companies and leaders that are selected to join this organization must go through a rigorous process. Not just anyone is accepted to be the representative for that organization, for their country. So that's not just easy to do, first of all. And that's good in that there's a selection process, there's interviews, there's meetings, there's before anyone's even accepted into it, all right, to the organization, because our reputations are on the line. Let's say I give my client to my Singapore partner. Well, I could be jeopardizing my business if she doesn't do a good job. And likewise, I could be jeopardizing her business if she refers a client to me and I don't do a high quality professional job. So for all the right reasons, you get this beauty of a local expertise specialist in your country, and you get the same expertise to your partners in other countries. And so let's say you need to do the business in Singapore or China or wherever else in the world we have our partners. And then I know the people, and then I can talk to them and they'll be very honest with me because we know each other. Can you do this? What's the differences? How can we do it? And I can say with confidence that I can recommend them, right? And then it works very well. So this is fantastic for our clients. This is different than the other larger organizations to where they just own all those operations around the world. And then they have hired guns in each one of these countries, right? That's not like our organization. Our organizations are people like you and I. Everyone has their business or part owner of it, whatever. So they have that same mentality that you and I have. It's our reputation. We'll live and die by it. So we have to give the best. So that's a value. The other value is when we meet, like, who can you talk to and even grow and learn in your own industry or your own expertise? Or suppose you're not as strong in one particular industry, but within our group, I guarantee you we have experts all over the world. Suppose you get a client in an organization that you need to know more about or need some help. Well, there's someone that will give it to you because they're not a competitor of yours. They're your partner, you see? So, like, you can't go to other people in Korea and talk to them, your competitors here, about, can you give me some ideas? How do you do this? Or how do you do this? Because you don't want to share that information, right? But we can share it in our global organization and learn from each other. And we do. And learn best practices, best expertise. All right. So there's a lot of value in it. I love the organization. They're wonderful. And we've had a lot of success with them, and it's continually growing. And so it's really exciting. I think for us and our clients, I think it's fantastic if people could understand this and appreciate it. It's awesome.
they allow similar companies in the same city or the same market to join the organization, or is it sort of a uh, or a
And
one company, one city
in
type of a thing?
well, in most cases, it's one organization for the country, but there are a few exceptions, like the United States, because it's such a big market, right? And so in that case, they've had to chop it up because it's such a big country, right? But then we have some partners where they have multiple offices over the entire country, and then that suffices. So that
Mm,
works. So most
okay.
cases, yeah, there's some exceptions.
You touched a little bit on how you first came to Korea. Could you tell us how the process was, personally and professionally, um, coming here full time, starting McKinney here in South Korea? What was that like for you?
Mm. Well, when I came back in industry, it was you mean like the difficulties or the adjustment? Yeah, is that the question?
Sure. These days, I'm noticing a lot of startups and businesses relocating here in Korea, other expats who were maybe doing other jobs, deciding that they want to become an entrepreneur or
Mm.
founder here in South Korea. I'm a part of a couple different, entrepreneur communities that are popping up. I'm starting my own community here with the round table. Um, and I see a lot of questions are being asked in some of these different channels about whether legal questions and different things
Mm.
about even simple stuff from starting a bank account. A lot
Yeah.
of these founders have a lot of questions. So I'm wondering what that process was like for you.
Well, you have now today uh, many more resources, much greater access to solutions to those questions that you just asked. When I came, those solutions weren't there. I mean, you had the people inside the company help you take care of those matters, and that was it. Organizations like the Seoul Global Center, for example, didn't exist. Incubation organizations here, or accelerators, whatever, they didn't exist, not really, in no meaningful way. So it was nothing like today. We had to learn everything the hard way and make the same mistakes that people do. Now I'm hired by people to coach through this, to coach through starting up businesses, living in Korea, starting a business. I'm hired to do that. Or like, for example, there's a large company, the SK invested in, and then I was hired to coach a group of those leaders on how to be successful in Korea. How are you going to do business with Korean people? And that type of things that I do and can do and help people with, it didn't exist when I started. So you're completely on your own. All right. So yeah, it didn't exist.
Did you get any assist from anybody? Did you have any partners? Did it all on your own?
Uh, when I was in athletics for side, no, just locally. And then when I started my own business in McKinney, then um, I had a Korean person that helped me. All right. But no, we had just to learn on the fly. I mean, we had to learn and that was just 20 some years ago, right? 22 years ago. Um, I mean, the actually, no, there was, I mean, even Invest Korea was not invented or established at that point. There were almost no resources available. I mean, yeah, I mean, you're very cold turkey, as the old saying goes. I mean, we just had to go to a bank and go to accountants. I mean, they were not foreigner friendly at all. Getting a credit card was nearly impossible. Okay. Um, so a lot of the things that are much easier now, I mean, yeah, we had no help, basically. There was none at that time.
Um, in terms of your background, you mentioned you're accredited several different coaching certificates. Specifically, the program you did at Harvard. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that has sort of helped you in terms of maybe getting new clients, retaining clients? How does that type of program, assist you in that regard?
Well, being a marketing guru that you are, as you know, sometimes you don't know what influences people to come to you. I wish I was better at that and could identify that, because it's sometimes it's hard to figure out. Why did they contact you, or what was their motivation? Unless you're really good at nailing that down. Why did you come to me? And sometimes it's not good to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm not sure. Basically, the program was actually very good. I did some work. There was some work that I did here locally, and then I had to do on the campus at Harvard to finish it. It was interesting in that there were leaders from all over the world. The professor was quite good. We got into some more of the neuropsychology, all right, and the way we think. You may have heard the old saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me."
Sure.
Well, when I was growing up, that was common, and people believed that. But actually, that's not true. They can now prove that words can harm us, and that they can affect us physically. Not we know emotionally, of course, but even physically has an effect on our bodies. So learning some more things about that and getting into depths with that. Also using the Harvard case study process, working through that, and yeah. So I think there's a lot of things like that I use and adapt now into my coaching and thinking and processes in various things that I do. So yeah, I think it's very beneficial. I think continual education is required.
Mm-hmm. So we'll finish on one question. Again, I want to thank you for your time. We've been speaking for a little over an hour now, I'm sure, or well over an hour. So our roundtable podcast aims to provide valuable insights to entrepreneurs and business owners, specifically in the area of consulting. Any tips or words of wisdom you can give to somebody who's either looking to start their own consulting firm or is looking to branch out or expand here into South Korea?
Just general tips, right?
Yes, general, yeah.
I think one of the things I said, learning very quickly the importance of managing cash flow, okay? Controlling your costs so that you can survive and thrive is very important. I think recognizing as early as possible what you're very good at and those areas that you're not very good at or you have a limited knowledge in. And because we all have those. And to learn that very quickly, the sooner you can learn that, the better off you will be, because no one succeeds alone. I'm not aware of anyone that succeeds alone. You need other people's help. My tip also is to give before receiving. In other words, what goes around comes around. If you're planting great seeds, you can expect a great harvest. If you're planting goodwill, you're helping people for all the right reasons, it will come back to you. Maybe not directly from them, maybe from someone else. All right. So to give before receiving, help others before asking for help. But then also be careful about the help that you ask from people. All right. Because if you're asking for people help, they expect you're going to reciprocate at some point in time. So be careful about that. Be careful about asking for help, but you need it. But collaboration, relationship building, finding someone that has some strength or expertise in areas that you don't have, and that maybe they can help you and that you can help them with what you know that they need help with. That's better a way of approaching things. Also, building your tribe of entrepreneurs is important because entrepreneurs are a rare breed. Not everyone thinks the way we think. Most times, spouses, partners, whatever, don't necessarily think the way we think. So it can be very lonely, okay? But finding other like-minded entrepreneurs that believe in vision, believe in seeing something that you can't put in front of your face that maybe could be possible and not be ridiculed for expressing ideas. Being able to fail and not looking at it as a failure, but just saying that's getting me just one step closer to a success. So that having that mentality, surrounding your people around things like that. If you can find mentors and get them, very hard to find, very hard to get, but if possible, that could be helpful. But what do you have to share with them? If you're only asking from them, maybe you have to think twice about that. So I think those are some things. And I believe also, excuse me, whenever you look at networking and focusing on who your client is, I like the idea of establishing the idea of creating your ideal customer and calling it like the avatar. This is the avatar. Maybe it's a male, maybe it's a female, maybe it's both. Maybe it's from America, Korea, whatever. But creating that avatar of that ideal target customer, right? That is really the right person, the right demographics, the right expertise, the right background. That's what you're searching for. Trying to get honed in on that. And then seek out those people, because those are the people that you want to work with for all the right reasons, of course, right? So I think that's going to also be important. So I think there's a few tips I think that that could be helpful, I think.
Fantastic. All great tips. So much nuggets to learn from, I feel like, over this discussion. I want to thank you again for giving us your time today. And I hope that we will be able to maybe bring you back on, have another discussion at some time in the future as well. And yes, I hope you also enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you. I did, and it's great to get to know you a little bit better. And I look forward to growing our relationship together, and wish you continued success. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.